Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Congratulations, 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 congratulations. Well done, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Well done, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Well done, well done. Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you. Oh, congratulations, 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 congratulations. Congratulations, congratulations, well done, well done. Congratulations to you, and you, and you, and you. Congratulations, congratulations. You did it, you did it, did it. Well done. You smashed it, you cashed it. Well done. You chased it, you aced it. Well done. Congratulations to you. best day of our lives. It's gonna be, it's gonna be, it's gonna be the best day of our lives. It's gonna be, it's gonna be, it's gonna be the best day of our lives. It's gonna be, it's gonna be, it's gonna be the best day of our lives.
Front on 3. 1, 2, 3.
There's so much momentum and so many great things happening in Fort Worth ISD. In fact, this year, we've cut the number of improvement required campuses in half and increased academic achievement across the board. So whether you're returning or starting your first year, you're part of a winning team. Coach Fesley, good to see you.
Good to see you, Dr. Scribner.
So I know we have football season coming up, but this isn't practice. What do we have going on here?
This is something maybe even more important or just as important as practice. The coaches call it Leadership Week.
Wonderful. Building leaders.
Building leaders. Building confidence, trust. It's very important. Coach Goebel has some special guests that you're going to want to catch.
Let's see it.
We have the United States Marines in here.
Coach Goebel called in a few good men who know a lot about leadership and team building to help turn the Southwest High School Raiders into champions.
Tell me what you think it needs to be a champion, Jalen.
To win and put effort, don't give up.
Win and put effort, don't give up. That's excellent.
So how do you get students to give it their all and keep going? Whether it's a science project or the buddy lift.
The buzzword in academics is rigor. You build a strong relationship with your students, you can be as rigorous as you want to be.
It sounds like you're building a culture.
Culture defeats strategy every time. The days of X and O coaching are dead.
I'm so proud of you, our teachers, for building community. It starts at the beginning of school with what we call the first 5. In those first 5 days, the focus is on getting to know each of your students, and then getting to know you and each other. Once students feel they belong, they engage more and achieve more. And we're seeing results. Fort Worth ISD was one of the most improved large urban districts in Texas. And scholarship offers totaled more than $92 million for the class of 2018. And students are continuing to learn even through the summer.
Every child wants to be successful. I just have to provide the energy, the effort, and the relationship for them to become successful.
And that's a winning formula in the classroom, on stage, and on the athletic field. So a great coach is also a great teacher, and a great teacher is also a great coach.
Every day, all day.
We're going to have a great year together, so stay cool. We'll see you in school.
All right, good morning, Jonah. Aiden, good morning.
I tell these guys, hair is overrated.
Right.
Yeah.
I tell my kids, I'll know when you're working hard because I say play and run around and coach with your hair on fire. That's what you'll look like me.
Here's the other thing.
Wake up, wake up, wake up! Let's go! It's time to go! It's time to go! Let's go! Let's go! Come on! Let's go!
Yeah! Today's the day! Hey, why are you sleeping? Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! It's time to go!
Come on! It's time!
What time is it?
Convocation time!
Let's go! Gotta go! Gotta go! 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 Yeah! Let's go! Let's go! There's a carpool here! Yeah!
Well, you can't say they're not passionate about their jobs.
Awesome! Here we go! Here we go!
The great teachers of Fort Worth ISD have plenty of reasons to celebrate the new school year.
They will be preparing all students for success. All students. Success in college, career, and community leadership. All students. A-L-L-all.
Well said. And welcome all to Fort Worth ISD Convocation 2018.
Don't you wish you could just bottle that energy?
Plus, have I been doing what in all these cheerleaders? And it's exciting. I'm thrilled to be with you today to celebrate the 18-19 Back to School event for Fort Worth ISD. You teachers are the backbone of what we do, so let's get this party started!
Helping us kick off the 2018-19 school year.
I'm thrilled to be here. Go Fort Worth ISD!
We're very excited to bring this presentation not only to our staff, faculty, and students here, but also to all of our campuses, 11,000 strong, our students, faculty, and staff out there in the schools watching us today.
The magic of technology. They can see us and see all these folks and get ready to teach our kids.
It's wonderful.
It's a great time.
Let's meet a few of our guests who are
Absolutely.
here. Our guests and longtime friends.
Absolutely, and great supporters.
Good morning. This is Representative Charlie Garrett.
Hi, Charlie.
I bet you.
I know this man. I know.
This is Anael Luevanos.
Nice to see you there.
District 9? Yes, that's right. Hey, District 8, excuse me. This is our trustee, Christine Moss.
Hi, Christine. Woo!
Wonderful to see you, Ms. Moss.
Mayor.
Our trustee, Norm Robbins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pye. Hello, Ashley. Good to see you.
We have
and who's this good-looking young man?
A Westcliff 5th grader here, Santino.
Hi, Santino. Keep working.
And you know my wife?
I know, Suleika. Good to see you there. What fun!
Yeah.
Woo!
Wonderful that everyone's here to help us kick off the year. And before we get started, why don't we listen to the Paschal Jazz Band for just a few moments?
Go Paschal Panthers!
Becky. Well, we thank you again, Mayor. You've been such a great support here in Fort Worth ISD. In fact, you were the first person I spoke to when I moved here to serve Fort Worth students, faculty, and staff just over 2 years ago.
You're more than welcome. What you do is the bottom line for everything we do in the city. Without great schools, great teachers, and great superintendents, we won't have a wonderful city and we won't have the workforce we need.
Well, I remember sitting on the tarmac at DFW and you and I were talking on the phone, and you indicated the importance for us here in Fort Worth to focus on a few things and do them well, literacy being one of them.
Literacy with our Read Fort Worth initiative, which you co-chair along with me and Matt Rose from Burlington Northern. We're going to have every one of these kids with a fabulous education, and all of them third graders reading by 2025.
Absolutely. Fort Worth ISD, with the support of our Board of Trustees, has focused on 3 primary initiatives: early literacy, middle years math, and college and career preparedness. And we're already seeing results. I don't know if you know, but Commissioner Morath also called me a couple weekends ago and indicated that we were one of the top 2 districts in the state of Texas in year-to-year growth, an 8% increase. We want to thank you for your support.
No, thank you, but most importantly, thank you for all you teachers who are out there. Every child deserves an excellent teacher. I guarantee you that everyone in this room can tell you who their favorite teacher was. My most influential teacher was Mrs. Graham, who was my 4th grade teacher at South High Mount Elementary. And to this day, I remember some of the lessons she taught me.
And you went to South High Mount and you continued on?
Stripling and to Arlington Heights, as did my husband, and our children also went through the Tanglewood Pyramid and graduated from Paschal. And I served as PTA president and on the management team at 5 different schools. So I've got a long commitment to this school district, but not just here, but to all our kids and to all our future. And it really is about your leadership and our teachers' leaderships. It's going to get this done.
Well, we absolutely appreciate you. I know we both agree that as go the schools, so goes the community, and so goes the city. And with strong leadership, our students who are in our classrooms today, They will be our workforce. They will be the leaders of Fort Worth. And if we're going to have a strong economy in the future, we must have strong education today.
Absolutely. Fort Worth is 15th largest city in the nation. It'll be the 12th with the 2020 census. We need great folks here working and grow in this city who care passionately about our kids, and I know y'all are doing that.
Well, we really appreciate you coming here to Fort Worth ISD this morning. I know you have a busy schedule today, and there's some very important issues at the city that you're addressing with budget. Just a few, I'm sure. So again, we thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come visit with us and our faculty and our staff as we get ready to kick off the 2018 academic year next Monday.
That's right. And thank you all, for all of you teachers out there, for what you do for our kids to make it a great city.
Monday will be a big day for teachers. Whether you're a new teacher or a veteran, the first day of school is exciting. And I'll bet no one ever forgets his or her first day as a new teacher. You know, this year, one of our longtime employees, Sammy Mungie, is retiring. And he recently shared with us his memories of his first day. We put together a little video to remember that. Let's watch.
Back then it was called Denver Avenue. It really does seem like yesterday that I stepped foot in this building. I'm Sammy Mungie, and this is what I remember about the beginning of my teaching journey. So I remember being excited about starting my teaching journey, and I decided to select first grade. I came early before my first contract day and went up to the office and got my key for the classroom. I opened the door and got a little shocked. You know, I opened the door and I said, "No, wait a minute, what happened?" I said, "No, where's the number line? Where's the alphabet? Where's the bulletin board?" I just kind of felt like everything would already be set up. It just never really dawned on me. And being fresh out of college and not having a lot of money, I went down to the dollar store and bought a few things and I put them up around the classroom and made it as presentable as possible. You know, the next thing I began to work on is my lesson plans, thinking about the first day of school and the first week of school. How was I going to get my students to understand the procedures and the like? I remember coming to that first day and honestly from the very beginning, nothing went as planned or nothing went as I imagined. I mean, kids were raising their hands, not knowing, excuse me, how do I do this, or help me with this, and yet I'm working with this. I just couldn't juggle it. I couldn't manage it, but somehow I survived. I was tired, I was frustrated, I spent a lot of time in preparation, and I just felt like everything went wrong. On the way home, I stopped at the store, and I bought a Fort Worth Star Telegram, and went into my apartment, and I sat down on my sofa, and of course at that time, my sofa also was my bed as well. But I remember sitting on the sofa, I turned to the classified section. I said, you know what, there must be something else I can do with a 4-year college degree. I don't know what clicked in my head, but I got up the next day and I went back to teach. Went the day after and the day after, and here I am 35 years later, not only still in the field of education, but still totally with Fort Worth ISD. No matter how difficult the first day or the first week or the first year, or maybe it's in the middle of your journey, you're going to have struggles. There's going to be times when you're going to begin to wonder that you make the right decision. But I encourage you to go back and reflect on why you got into the field of teaching. I believe that the vast majority of us that go into teaching, we go in because we want to make a difference in the lives of our students. I'm Sammy Mungie, and that was the beginning of my teaching journey.
What a great story, and we thank you, Sammy, for your leadership and your support and the decades that you've served our students as a teacher, as an assistant principal, central office leader, and most recently as our chief of policy and planning. Again, let's give Sammy a big round of applause. Our special guest today is a champion in every sense of the word, for public schools, for adequate school funding, for the school's role in American society. When this man speaks, people listen. He's Reverend Charles Foster Johnson, and he founded the Bread Faith Community here in Fort Worth. Also, Pastors for Texas Children, an organization that has more than 2,000 faith leaders throughout the state advocating for public education and the legislation that enriches our children. His achievements are too many to name here, but just a couple of weeks ago, the Texas School Public Relations Association named him Key Communicator of the Year. Congratulations on his latest honor, Reverend Johnson, and welcome to the Fort Worth ISD Convocation.
Thank you, Superintendent. Great being here.
It's great to see you, Pastor Johnson, and we really appreciate, again, the message that you're putting out not only here in Fort Worth, but across Texas about the importance of public schools and the importance of the legislature and the community funding and supporting our teachers and students.
Dr. Scribner, I'm so proud to be here, grateful for the opportunity to be with you, with your staff, and especially your teachers, and these great, beautiful students here today. What energy in this room, enthusiasm for all 80,000 plus, almost 90,000 Fort Worth school children, and it's a privilege for me to stand with teachers. Yes, we got some faith leaders together 5 years ago. We're coming up on our 5th birthday, and we started Pastors for Texas Children with a very simple idea. Let's get faith leaders in the community who are connected to leaders at large in every sphere of human activity, business and agriculture and oil. All these people attend a congregation somewhere. And let's generate community support for public schools. And we've had some great success in this message.
So Texas has done some great things historically in terms of focusing on student achievement. We, I think, have challenges when it comes to investment. I've always said that in our society, we pay for our priorities. Is public education a priority?
It's a priority not high enough in Texas. When you get out in the communities, as we do, because faith leaders are everywhere, there's a congregation everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you talk to people out in the small towns and the large cities in Texas, people believe in their public schools. People believe in their classroom teachers. The mayor's already said it in a beautiful way. Representative Guerin's here to stand with these teachers. There's no one more important than a teacher, and Texans believe that. Legislatively, in school funding policy, we're not quite where we need to be. We've got a great public servant in Charlie Guerin who has pushed and pushed and pushed for proper, adequate school funding. Unfortunately, we've got some elected officials, particularly on the Senate side, that are not properly funding our schools. That needs to change. And the way it changes is we get our pro-public education message out in the hedges and highways, every street, every neighborhood, every community. And when Texans reaffirm, take that experience that they had as a child with that teacher. I remember my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Pompadour. I might tell a story about Mrs. Pompadour. Listen, that was back before the earth cooled. It was so long ago. And we take that beautiful gratitude that we have and we translate it into public policy. That's going to happen. We're in the last quarter among the states in the whole nation in funding per pupil our public schools. Mm-hmm. That needs to change. We're a very successful state. Governor Perry once called us the Texas miracle. God has given us a lot of financial wealth. It is a matter of priority. You're right, Superintendent. Mm-hmm. And so we have to put the priority with our money, with our pocketbook, that God places on education. It is the moral value of our society, and it must be reaffirmed in Texas, and everybody in this room and a whole lot of people outside this room believe that, and we're going to see some positive changes very soon.
Well, one of the things that my wife and I really appreciated moving to Fort Worth is the understanding that as go the schools, so goes the city. That education and the economy are inextricably linked.
Yes.
That the students, I've been a public educator for 30 years, and one thing I've learned is in those 30 years that students in our classrooms today, they're all going to grow up to be adults. And so the question is, what kind of Fort Worth, what kind of Texas do we want to have?
Yes.
So school and economy is connected, but public schools, it's more than that.
The school is the foundational building block of American democracy. We need to recover all of that language that we learned growing up 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, when citizenship was a higher priority. Schools are incubators of American citizens. Now, unfortunately, we think in terms not of citizenship, but of taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer, but that is subservient to my role as a citizen. So my job is to build up the community. The way to build up the community as a citizen is to support neighborhood and community public schools. Why, we might ask? The public school accepts every child, no questions asked. We're addressing your competent, wonderful, dedicated teachers and staff right now, and I'm privileged to do so. And I have to shout out to Nick, my church member from Bread Fellowship that teaches at John Harvey Peace, at Hazel Harvey Peace Elementary, and all our school teachers, because they are training citizens from the earliest grade level right up to 12th grade. When we properly educate our children, we are making an investment in the public good that will pay dividends for decades, Dr. Scribner. So we make a 12-year investment, 13, K through 12. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about early childhood, I think, in a minute. Absolutely. We need to get some quality instructional programming for our youngest kiddos. But we make that investment, and that investment accrues benefits for all of us in taxes, as well as many other ways. What are those ways? That educated individual is going to have a good paying job, is going to have a stable family life. All the data shows this, particularly if that person can go on to a year or two of post-secondary education, is going to be a solid citizen in the community, is going to be a contributor to the community. We believe today, unfortunately, in immediate gratification. Unfortunately, we're too greedy. We want to keep that money for our short-term gain. We've got some political leaders whose whole political platform is, you get to keep your money, your money, your money. Well, hold on. God put me on this planet. God gave me the ability to generate an income. Jana and I have 3 children. Our children are grown. We're happy paying our property taxes to support our wonderful Fort Worth schools. We want to do that because it's in our interest to do that. Our children are grown, but what about our grandchildren? They don't live in Fort Worth, but I hope that the communities where they live in Kansas and West Texas, San Angelo, is supporting their schools. And we want to properly educate our neighbors' children. It's in our interest to do so. It's a good thing. It's a unifying thing. And I do think, thanks to your leadership, thanks to the leadership of Mayor Price, thanks to the leadership of Representative Garrett, thanks to the leadership of our wonderful Fort Worth faith leaders in all the faith traditions. And if you believe in public schools and believe education is a human right for all children, you're welcome in our network. Thanks to the good leadership, we're raising the bar. And the needle is moving, and communities are turning back to supporting our schools.
And this is not a new idea, the concept of the government supporting public schools. We talked a lot about the history of this from the birth of this nation and from Texas's history as well.
Well, the ink on the Constitution was hardly dry before our framers realized, the founders of our nation realized, we've got to have an educated populace. In the old country, only the haves were educated. Only the people who were from families who could afford what was basically a private education. By the way, any form of education is beautiful. Private schools, home schools, public schools. And a few families do choose to educate their children in ways other than public. We affirm that. We want the government to stay out of those voluntary assemblies of private schools and homeschools. That's one of the things we stand for, public being public, private being private, and respecting those boundaries. But John Adams said in 1785, let there be not 1 square mile without a school in it. Now we can quibble with that geography, but he was making a point. Let there be not 1 square mile without a school in it. Not paid for by the generosity of a charitable individual, but by the public, for the public, at the public's expense. In other words, a public trust. Just like fire protection and police protection, we don't say that our neighbor doesn't get to have public safety, because our neighbor's safety is tied to our own safety. We have an inextricable mutual interest. If the house next door to us is burning, we want the Fort Worth Fire Department to come put that fire out. Do I hear an amen? In the same way, we want good schools in every single Fort Worth neighborhood, paid for by the public. It's a public investment. And those of us who are older, who have been fortunate and privileged to have a good life and economic security, especially have a responsibility to invest in the education of all our children.
Wonderful. And I think a lot of people outside of our school community don't understand the population that the Fort Worth ISD serves. We serve a student population, 77% of whom live at or below the federal poverty line. So 3 out of 4 students are struggling economically. We serve a diverse student population. Almost half of our students speak a language at home other than English. We have over 50 languages spoken in our district. 39,000 students come to us speaking Spanish. So we are rich in diversity. We have a great opportunity to change the lives of our young people through education. One of our initiatives, as you heard the mayor talk about, was Read Fort Worth, creating a basic foundation of literacy from birth all the way to the 3rd grade. Tell us a little bit about your feelings with regard to investing in the youngest Fort Worthians.
It's just of critical, absolutely critical importance. And Superintendent, you have been a leader in our state in raising the awareness of the importance of having children read on grade level by 3rd grade. In fact, I remember a very enriching meeting that you led at First Presbyterian Church downtown right after you got here, where you had about 50 of us in a fellowship hall, and you instructed us about why that was so important, which parenthetically, we want education leaders to educate faith leaders about what our children need. That's important, and you do that role very, very responsibly. No, we must invest and make significant investments in the education of our youngest children. Let's get that 4-year-old in a high-quality, full-day, pre-kindergarten instructional program. It's not babysitting, it's not even daycare, it's very specific training at the hands of competent professionals in nurturing and educating and instructing our children. We do that, and it will pay dividends all throughout, not only for the next 12 years, 13 years, but all throughout that child's life. Now, our governor believes that. Governor Abbott believes that. He has led in that. Politics is a very messy thing, and we didn't get the advancement of that idea and that concept in last session. We're hoping that that will be a priority in the upcoming legislative session. You know, I want to say just a brief word. Politics is power and how it's distributed. That's all it is. And those 70-something% of poor children in our schools in Fort Worth, they deserve to be properly educated with proper investments. The diversity in our communities is a gift. And amen. And thank God for political leaders and education leaders and faith leaders who see that. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in God's sight. And look, I don't want to just, go to preaching here. But those children are accepted with unconditional love by these teachers whom we're privileged to address, by these coaches, by these counselors, these nurses, these librarians, these bus drivers, these cafeteria professionals, these janitorial professionals. And every one of these people have a role to play in the well-being of every child in Fort Worth. We're not quite there yet in our investment in the education of those children, but we can get there.
Sure. So in Fort Worth, we, like most cities, we find that connecting with community is essential to our success. We can't do this by ourselves. In fact, our literacy initiative is a collective impact initiative where we're trying to connect with business leaders. Our co-chair is Matt Rose from BNSF Railroad, elected officials, Betsy Price, educators like those who are here, our board of trustees who are doing great work in leading our committees on equity and on excellence, the faith leaders, as we spoke about, the philanthropic community. One of the areas where educators struggle at the middle school and the high school, probably more so than the elementary, is connecting with parents and connecting with families. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is to be able to talk to moms and dads and guardians?
Well, it's a great question, Ken. And thanks be to God for you and your staff. You make it a priority to build community relationships. And you have committed and competent staff whose full-time jobs it is to do that. And every school district needs that. You and your colleagues are raising the bar among the superintendency. We see it throughout the state. No, we can't just communicate to our teachers. We have to communicate to the whole community at large. And I would just say that when the 87,000 staff and teachers of the Fort Worth Independent School District also become advocates for public education outside the classroom, in whatever sphere, family, start with your family, start with your social circle that you enjoy happy hour with. Excuse me, I know a preacher's not supposed to talk about happy hour.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Your Sunday school class, there you go, how about that? The softball field, talk public education wherever you go. Now, specifically to answer your question, indeed, indeed, indeed. Who owns our schools? You don't. No. This wonderful school board doesn't. No. We own our schools. West Cliff is right across the way from where Jana and I live. Tanglewood Elementary is right up the street. We own that school. And all the people in Fort Worth. So that's our investment. They ought to be. Our school buildings ought to be the best buildings in the community. Our teachers, all right, teachers, listen up. Our teachers need to be paid well.
Yes, absolutely.
And we must have a legislative policy that restores all of those positions that were cut in the drastic, draconian 2011 cuts. And a lot of our hearers right now don't even remember it, but you know about it.
Sure, absolutely.
And when $5.4 billion with a B were cut, and only $3.4 billion restored in 2013, and no real significant increases in funding. And here we are in 2019 soon, and we're $6 billion, $7 billion, $8 billion behind. And we've got $13 billion in a rainy day fund.
Right.
And y'all, it's raining.
Yeah, pouring.
It's pouring.
Yeah.
And meantime, you've got a bunch of kids that need good teachers, good librarians. So here are the positions that were cut. The community liaison was cut. The classroom assistant was cut. Coaching positions were cut. Librarian positions were cut. I remember my teachers and librarians and nurses and counselors well, just as well as my classroom teachers. We need to restore those positions. And we need schools being incubators of community unity. The word means unity with. Involvement investment so that your classroom teachers don't feel isolated. They know you love them. They know your staff loves them. They know their principals love them. They need to know that their business leaders love them. And when they have a need, they can go to the banker, and the banker says, you bet, Mr. Johnson, we can take care of that. They need to know their churches love them. Every educator needs to, if I may just say so, every educator needs to make an initiative toward a pastor, a faith leader, a priest, a Jewish rabbi, a Muslim cleric, whatever the faith tradition. The educator needs to reach out to the faith leader. We must all together use our voices to make a mighty chorus of support for public education as a basic human right for all children. I got to give a plug for social media. A lot of your teachers are on Twitter. Who would have thunk Twitter was so important? Now I'm going to give you our Twitter handle. Pastors for TX Kids. Pastors #4 TX Kids. Teachers, follow us right now. Wonderful. Pastors #4. Y'all take out your cell phones and do it right now. Pastors #4 TX Kids. What if on Facebook, Pastors for Texas Children on Facebook, what if in all our social media platforms, we got this positive message out? Teachers, when it's appropriate, tell a story about your children. Your children are geniuses. They're geniuses. If not intellectually, then emotionally. If not emotionally, artistically. If not artistically, athletically. And you are a genius, teachers, in reaching into that child and helping that child see her God-given giftedness.
I love to hear you talk about voice and of having a seat at the table. As we wrap up this morning, and thank you so much for your commitment, could you please share with us your perspective around that? We talked about social media, parent voice, teacher voice, support staff, and administrator voice. What guidance would you give us?
Dr. Scribner, thank you for having me. This has been a real privilege. Home, school, congregation. Home, school, congregation. Those are the building blocks of civil society. Those are the three institutions, preserving and maintaining and advancing the common good. So everyone has a seat at the table. Every one of your professionals that we're addressing today makes a place at the table for every child. I'll tell a story that has become an important story for me. My father died several years ago. He suffered from neurological disease. He had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and toward the end of his life, he could not remember my name or the names of any of his 4 sons. And I'd come to visit him from Texas. He lived in Florida, and he'd say, "Now, who are you?" And I'd say, "Dad, I'm Charlie." And he'd say, "Oh, yes, Charlie." And then 30 seconds later, "Who are you?" And we'd go through it all again. After his death, we were in his hunting cabin in South Alabama, where my family has lived for 6 generations, and it was land cleared by our grandfathers, and my father enjoyed retirement there, hunting and fishing. We were going through all of his things, just a paraphernalia of a life fitly and richly lived. And my brother said, "Fellas, come here, you got to see this." He was in the kitchen. He peeled back the tablecloth of the wooden table in the kitchen, and there carved into that table were the names of all my father's sons: Langdon, Francis, Charles, Dennis, and at the head of the table, Daddy. And we imagine one rainy day when Dad was indoors, he very carefully carved the names of his children into his table so that we would always know, long after he could tell us himself or even call our names, that we always had a place at our Father's table. Every child in the Fort Worth Independent School District has a place at the table. And thanks be to God for these professionals who are answering a call to make a place at the table for all children.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Charlie. What a wonderful way to start the year, and again, we thank you for your support, we thank you for your guidance, we thank you for your leadership, and we thank you for your voice. Let's give Charlie another big round of applause.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Charlie.
We thank you all, and we want to also give a big hand to the Paschal High School Jazz Band, Southwest, do a big hand for South. The Southwest High School drum line, round of applause for the drum line. Also from our cheerleaders from Benbrook High School, South Hills, Diamond Hill, Jarvis, and Polytechnic. In addition, in our audience are leaders from all of our high schools, and many of them are part of the United Voices for Change. And this just in, as you know, we are transitioning from a paper and pencil registration system where my wife had to sign a piece of paper 8 times for one kid. Some of our families, as yours, you had 4 of you. We have now moved to an online system whereby we will this year for the first time register all of our students online, and then that information will sit and be able to transform to future students, making sure we have accurate information. But we'd like to give a shout out to our schools who have done a great job as we lead up until Monday, signing up their students. Marine Creek Collegiate with 97% of their students already enrolled. Monday will be a big day at the school offices as usual. Tabs, 96%. West Park Elementary, 94%. Trimble Tech High School, 94%. McLean Middle School, 90. YWLA, 89. Tarrant County College, TCC South, 88. Benbrook, 87, and a host of others in the high 80s. Dolores Huerta, South Hills Elementary, Arlington Heights High School, Lily B., J.T. Stevens, Stripling, Burton Hill, and Benbrook Elementary. We want to thank all of you for your hard work. And that's important because teaching and learning takes place on the first day of school at Fort Worth ISD. We want to give a big thanks to all of you out there watching. I know you're ready to get to work, and we're going to have a great year. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Your energy. Thank you. So,
I appreciate it.
Such an inspiration.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, let's Kiana, you